using converters, listeners, and validators. The previous chapter described components and explained how to add them to a web page. This chapter provides information on adding more functionality to the components through converters, listeners, and validators. Converters are used to convert data that is received from the input components. Listeners are used to listen to the events happening in the page and perform actions as defined. Validators are used to validate the data that is received from the input components. The following topics are addressed here. Using the standard converters, registering listeners on components using the standard validators, referencing a backing bean method. Using the standard converters. The JavaServer Faces implementation provides a set of converter implementations that you can use to convert component data. The standard converter implementations, located in the JavaServer Faces convert package, are as follows: big decimal converter, big integer converter, boolean converter, byte converter, character converter, datetime converter, double converter, enum converter, float converter, integer converter, long converter, number converter, short converter. A standard error message is associated with each of these converters. If you have registered one of these converters onto a component on your page, and the converter is not able to convert the component's value, the converter's error message will display on the page. For example, the following error message appears if big integer converter fails to convert a value. 0 must be a number consisting of 1 or more digits. In this case, the 0 substitution parameter will be replaced with the name of the input component on which the converter is registered. Two of the standard converters, datetime converter and number converter, have their own tags, which allow you to configure the format of the component data using the tag attributes. For more information about using datetime converter, see using datetime converter. For more information about using number converter, see using number converter. The following section explains how to convert a component's value, including how to register other standard converters with the component. Converting a component's value. To use a particular converter to convert a component's value, you need to register the converter onto the component. You can register any of the standard converters in one of the following ways. Nest one of the standard converter tags inside the component's tag. These tags are convertDateTime and convertNumber, which are described in using datetime converter and using number converter, respectively. Bind the value of the component to a backing bean property of the same type as the converter. Refer to the converter from the component tag's converter attribute. Nest a converter tag inside of the component tag, and use either the converter tag's converterId attribute or its binding attribute to refer to the converter. As an example of the second method, if you want a component's data to be converted to an integer, you can simply bind the component's value to a backing bean property. Here is an example. Integer age equals 0. Public integer get age return age. Public void set age integer age this. Age equal age. If the component is not bound to a bean property, you can use the third method by using the converter attribute directly on the component tag. H. Input text converter equal JavaServer Faces convert integer converter. This example shows the converter attribute referring to the fully qualified class name of the converter. The converter attribute can also take the IDO of the component. The data from the input text tag in this example will be converted to a java.lang integer value. The integer type is a supported type of number converter. If you don't need to specify any formatting instructions using the convertNumber tag attributes, and if one of the standard converters will suffice, you can simply reference that converter by using the component tag's converter attribute. Finally, you can nest a converter tag within the component tag and use either the converter tag's converterId attribute or its binding attribute to reference the converter. The converterId attribute must reference the converter's id. Here is an example. H. Input text value equal log in bean. Age. F. Converter id equal integer. H. Input text. Instead of using the converterId attribute, the converter tag can use the binding attribute. The binding attribute must resolve to a bean property that accepts and returns an appropriate converter instance. Using datetime converter, you can convert a component's data to a Java util Date by nesting the convertDateTime tag inside the component tag. The convertDateTime tag has several attributes that allow you to specify the format and type of the data. Table 8-1 lists the attributes. Here is a simple example of a convertDateTime tag. H. Output text int equals ship date value equal cashier. Ship date. F. ConvertDateTime date style equal full. H. Output text. When binding the datetime converter to a component, ensure that the backing bean property to which the component is bound is of type Java. Util. Date. In the preceding example, cashier. Ship date must be of type Java. Util. Date. The example tag can display the following output: Saturday, September 25, 2010. You can also display the same date and time by using the following tag where the date format is specified. H. Output text value equal cashier. Ship date. F. ConvertDateTime pattern equal EEOE 3000 DDE. H. Output text. If you want to display the example date in Spanish, you can use the locale attribute. H. Input text value equal cashier. Ship date. F. ConvertDateTime date style equal full locale equal locale. Spain time style equal long type equal both. H. Input text. This tag would display the following output: Sabato 25 September D 2010. Refer to the customizing formats lesson of the Java tutorial at http. Download. Oracle.com. Javabase. Tutorial. I18N. Format. Simple date format. HTML. For more information on how to format the output using the pattern attribute of the convertDateTime tag. Table 8-1 attributes for the convertDateTime tag attribute type description binding datetime converter used to bind a converter to a backing bean property. Date style string defines the format as specified by Java. Text. Date format of a date or the date part of a date string. Applied only if type is date or both and if pattern is not defined. Valid values. Default, short, medium, long, and full. If no value is specified, default is used. For string used with composite components, refers to one of the objects within the composite component inside which this tag is nested. Locale string or locale whose predefined styles for dates and times are used during formatting or parsing. If not specified, the locale returned by faces context. Get locale will be used. Pattern string custom formatting pattern that determines how the date time string should be formatted and parsed. If this attribute is specified, date style, time style, and type attributes are ignored. Time style string defines the format as specified by Java. Text. Date format of a time or the time part of a date string. Applied only if type is time and pattern is not defined. Valid values. Default, short, medium, long, and full. If no value is specified, default is used. Time zone string or time zone in which to interpret any time information in the date string. Type string specifies whether the string value will contain a date, a time, or both. Valid values are date, time, or both. If no value is specified, date is used. Using number converter, you can convert a component's data to a java.lang.Number by nesting the convertNumber tag inside the component tag. The convertNumber tag has several attributes that allow you to specify the format and type of the data. Table 8-2 lists the attributes. The following example uses a convertNumber tag to display the total prices of the contents of a shopping cart. H. Output text value equal cart. Total. F. ConvertNumber type equal currency. H. Output text. When binding the number converter to a component, ensure that the backing bean property to which the component is bound is of a primitive type or has a type of Java.lang.Number. In the preceding example, cart. Total is of type Java.lang.Number. Here is an example of a number that this tag can display, $934. This result can also be displayed by using the following tag, where the currency pattern is specified, H. Output text id equal cart total value equal cart. Total. F. Convert number pattern equal $. H. Output text. See the customizing formats lesson of the Java tutorial at http. Download. Oracle.com. Javabase. Tutorial. I18N. Format. Decimal format. HTML for more information on how to format the output by using the pattern attribute of the convertNumber tag. Table 8-2 attributes for the convertNumber tag attribute type description binding number converter used to bind a converter to a backing bean property. Currency code string ISO 4217 currency code used only when formatting currencies. Currency symbol string currency symbol applied only when formatting currencies. For string used with composite components. Refers to one of the objects within the composite component inside which this tag is nested. Grouping used Boolean specifies whether formatted output contains grouping separators. Integer only Boolean specifies whether only the integer part of the value will be parsed. Locale string or locale whose number styles are used to format or parse data. Max fraction digits int maximum number of digits formatted in the fractional part of the output. Max integer digits int maximum number of digits formatted in the integer part of the output. Min fraction digits int minimum number of digits formatted in the fractional part of the output. Min integer digits int minimum number of digits formatted in the integer part of the output. Pattern string custom formatting pattern that determines how the number string is formatted and parsed. Type string specifies whether the string value is parsed and formatted as a number, currency, or percentage. If not specified, number is used. Registering listeners on components. An application developer can implement listeners as classes or as backing bean methods. If a listener is a backing bean method, the page author references the method from either the component's ValueChangeListener attribute or its actionListener attribute. If the listener is a class, the page author can reference the listener from either a ValueChangeListener tag or an actionListener tag and nest the tag inside the component tag to register the listener on the component. Referencing a method that handles an action event and referencing a method that handles a ValueChangeEvent explain how a page author uses the ValueChangeListener and actionListener attributes to reference backing bean methods that handle events. This section explains how to register the name-changed ValueChangeListener and a hypothetical locale change actionListener implementation on components. Registering a ValueChangeListener on a component. A ValueChangeListener implementation can be registered on a component that implements editable value holder by nesting a ValueChangeListener tag within the components tag on a page. The ValueChangeListener tag supports the attributes shown in Table 8-3, one of which must be used. Table 8-3 attributes for the ValueChangeListener tag attribute description type references the fully qualified class name of a ValueChangeListener implementation, can accept a literal or a value expression, binding references an object that implements ValueChangeListener, can accept only a value expression, which must point to a backing bean property that accepts and returns a ValueChangeListener implementation. The following example shows the ValueChangeListener registered on a component. H. Input text id equal name size equal 50 value equal cashier. Name required equal true. F. ValueChangeListener type equal listeners. Name changed. H. Input text. In the example, the core tag type attribute specifies the custom name changed listener as the ValueChangeListener implementation registered on the name component. After this component tag is processed and local values have been validated, its corresponding component instance will queue the ValueChangeEvent associated with the specified ValueChangeListener to the component. The binding attribute is used to bind a ValueChangeListener implementation to a backing bean property. This attribute works in a similar way to the binding attribute supported by the standard converter tags. Registering an actionListener on a component. A page author can register an actionListener implementation on a command component by nesting an actionListener tag within the components tag on the page. Similarly to the ValueChangeListener tag, the actionListener tag supports both the type and binding attributes. One of these attributes must be used to reference the actionListener. Here is an example of a command link tag that references an actionListener implementation rather than a backing bean method. Command link id equal numerica action equal bookstore. F. ActionListener type equal listeners. Locale change. H. Command link. The type attribute of the actionListener tag specifies the fully qualified class name of the actionListener implementation. Similarly to the ValueChangeListener tag, the actionListener tag also supports the binding attribute. Using the standard validators, JavaServer Faces technology provides a set of standard classes and associated tags that page authors and application developers can use to validate a component's data. Table 8-4 lists all the standard validator classes and the tags that allow you to use the validators from the page. Table 8-4 The validator classes validator class tag function bean validator validate bean registers a bean validator for the component. Double range validator validate double range checks whether the local value of a component is within a certain range. The value must be floating point or convertible to floating point. Length validator validate length checks whether the length of a component's local value is within a certain range. The value must be a java.lang. String. Long range validator validate long range checks whether the local value of a component is within a certain range. The value must be any numeric type or string that can be converted to a long. Regex validator validate regex checks whether the local value of a component is a match against a regular expression from the Java util. Regex package. Required validator validate required ensures that the local value is not empty on an editable value holder component. Similar to the standard converters, each of these validators has one or more standard error messages associated with it. If you have registered one of these validators onto a component on your page, and the validator is unable to validate the component's value, the validator's error message will display on the page. For example, the error message that displays when the component's value exceeds the maximum value allowed by long-range validator is as follows. 1. Validation error. Value is greater than allowable maximum of 0. In this case, the 1 substitution parameter is replaced by the component's label or id, and the 0 substitution parameter is replaced with the maximum value allowed by the validator. Instead of using the standard validators, you can use bean validation to validate data. See using bean validation for more information. Validating a component's value. To validate a component's value using a particular validator, you need to register the validator on the component. You can do this in one of the following ways. Nest the validator's corresponding tag shown in Table 8-4 inside the component's tag. Using long-range validator explains how to use the validate long-range tag. You can use the other standard tags in the same way. Refer to a method that performs the validation from the component tag's validator attribute. Nest a validator tag inside the component tag, and use either the validator tag's validatorId attribute or its binding attribute to refer to the validator. See referencing a method that performs validation for more information on using the validator attribute. The validatorId attribute works similarly to the converterId attribute of the converter tag, as described in converting a component's value. Keep in mind that validation can be performed only on components that implement editable value holder, because these components accept values that can be validated. Using long-range validator. The following example shows how to use the validate long-range validator on an input component named quantity. H. Input text id equal quantity size equal for value equal item. Quantity. F. Validate long range minimum equal 1. H. Input text. H. Message for equal quantity. This tag requires the user to enter a number that is at least 1. The size attribute specifies that the number can have no more than 4 digits. The validate long-range tag also has a maximum attribute, which sets a maximum value for the input. the attributes of all the standard validator tags except EL value expressions. This means that the attributes can reference backing bean properties rather than specify literal values. For example, the validate long-range tag in the preceding example can reference a backing bean property called minimum to get the minimum value acceptable to the validator implementation, as shown here. F. Validate long-range minimum equals show cart bean. Minimum. Referencing a backing bean method. A component tag has a set of attributes for referencing backing bean methods that can perform certain functions for the component associated with the tag. These attributes are summarized in Table 8-5. Table 8-5 component tag attributes that reference backing bean methods. Attribute function action refers to a backing bean method that performs navigation processing for the component and returns a logical outcome string. ActionListener refers to a backing bean method that handles action events. Validator refers to a backing bean method that performs validation on the component's value. ValueChangeListener refers to a backing bean method that handles value change events. Only components that implement action source can use the action and ActionListener attributes. Only components that implement editable value holder can use the validator or ValueChangeListener attributes. The component tag refers to a backing bean method using a method expression as a value of one of the attributes. The method referenced by an attribute must follow a particular signature, which is defined by the tag attributes definition in the documentation at http download oracle.com. Java 6. JavaServer Faces 2. 1. Docs. Vdocs. JSP. For example, the definition of the validator attribute of the input text tag is the following. Void validate javax. Faces. Context. Faces context, javax. Faces. Component. AI component, java.lang. Object. The following sections give examples of how to use the attributes, referencing a method that performs navigation. If your page includes a component, such as a button or a hyperlink, that causes the application to navigate to another page when the component is activated, the tag corresponding to this component must include an action attribute. This attribute does one of the following: specifies a logical outcome string that tells the application which page to access next, references a backing bean method that performs some processing and returns a logical outcome string. The following example shows how to reference a navigation method. H. Command button value equal bundle. Submit action equal cashier. Submit. Referencing a method that handles an action event. If a component on your page generates an action event, and if that event is handled by a backing bean method, you refer to the method by using the component's ActionListener attribute. The following example shows how the method is referenced. H. Command link it equal numerica action equal bookstore ActionListener equal localbean. Choose locale from link. The ActionListener attribute of this component tag references the choose locale from link method using a method expression. The choose locale from link method handles the event when the user clicks the hyperlink rendered by this component, referencing a method that performs validation. If the input of one of the components on your page is validated by a backing bean method, refer to the method from the components tag by using the validator attribute. The following example shows how to reference a method that performs validation on email, an input component. H. Input text it equal email value equal checkout form bean. Email size equal 25 max length equal 125 validator equal checkout form bean. Validate email. Referencing a method that handles a value change event. If you want a component on your page to generate a value change event and you want that event to be handled by a backing bean method, you refer to the method by using the component's ValueChangeListener attribute. The following example shows how a component references a ValueChangeListener implementation that handles the event when a user enters a name in the name input field. H. Input text it equal name size equal 50 value equal cashier. Name required equal true. F. ValueChangeListener type equal listeners. Name changed. H. Input text. to refer to this backing bean method, the tag uses the ValueChangeListener attribute. H. Input text id equal name size equal 50 value equal cashier. Name required equal true ValueChangeListener equal cashier. Process value change. H. Input text. The ValueChangeListener attribute of this component tag references the process value change method of cashier bean by using a method expression. The process value change method handles the event of a user entering a name in the input field rendered by this component.